Welcome everybody to the September 15th Board of Education meeting. Just real quickly, a few housekeeping items. The Open Public Meeting Statement, in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of that act, the School District of the Chatham, the Board of Education, has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the time, date, place thereof posted in the Board Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of the Borough, Chatham Borough and the Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, and the Star Ledger. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind doing roll call? And it shouldn't take too long tonight.
No problem. Mr. Gilfield, Ms. Chitterelli.
Here.
Ms. Clark. Mr. Conlon. Ms. Cronin. Mr. Fred.
Here.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
Mr. Monamaker.
Here.
And Ms. Weber.
Here.
5 present and counting.
5. Thank you. Would everybody please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out. I don't have any initial opening comments, although I'm happy to see a lot of people here. It's usually quite lonely. I will reserve some opening comments for right before the public commentary. And just for those of you that don't get a chance to come here too often, we'll go through some administrative reports, some committee reports. There'll be an opportunity for public commentary. We'll go through the regular agenda. Then the board will conduct its board business. And then there's another opportunity for public commentary at the end of that. So that's the general format. So moving right along to the administrative stuff so we can get to what you all come to say and share with us. Dr. LaSousa, could you start us off?
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Weber. Just a few items to report. First off, it's been a smooth start to the school year. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, before we welcomed the students back, we thought we were in pretty good shape, and sure enough, we hit the ground running, I think. Especially from a scheduling perspective, things were pretty good at the high school and the middle school. We didn't have a lot of adjustments that we needed to make initially. We had a couple of issues or hiccups to work through, as we always do the first couple of days with transportation. But after the first couple of days, that first week, we've been good since then. So it's been a good start. Our enrollment also has leveled off. We always have a number of students who just don't show up when the school year begins because they've moved, but we haven't been alerted to that fact yet. So we have cleaned up our systems. We've been in touch with the schools where those students have shown up. And as of today, we have 4,153 students in the district, which is still the largest enrollment ever in the district, but down a few students from the last time I reported. On the good news front, we received word yesterday that one of our staff members, Karen Leister, will be recognized at a conference called the Community Food Allergy Conference. I believe that's a national event that's taking place next week. And she's being recognized. Karen Leister is our school nurse at Southern Boulevard School. She's our lead district nurse, and she's being recognized for all the work she's done in developing model policies around food allergies and events that she's organized to help students at Southern Boulevard School and in the district manage their food allergies. And I know that many parents that I've interacted with here and again point out or like to tell me what a great job Karen Leister does. She's a terrific asset to the district, and I just want to congratulate her publicly. And then finally, I just wanted to alert the board as well that I've had a couple of meetings now with the superintendents in Summit, Milburn, New Providence, and Berkeley Heights, and we're working on joining forces and having a collective effort around the topic of student wellness and organizing kind of a rotating set of programs that would address a different wellness topic. For example, the first one will probably be on October 20th in Summit around substance abuse issues. So we're excited about that, and our student assistance counselors from all of those districts are getting together in the near future to map out the rest of the year and possibly some events next year. So just look out for some publicity and news around events in a broader sense involving 4 or 5 communities nearby. And that's my report. Yep, Ms. Kenny.
Just following up, do they have they started similar programs that we have implemented in the last couple of years in terms of the wellness initiatives, or?
They all have different variations. There are active municipal alliances in some of those communities that have helped the schools put on parent programs and held other events. So I know one of the districts is planning to bring in Eric LeGrand, and of course he was here with us last year, so I think there are probably a good number of people who would like to see him again if possible, including me. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. We're waiting for the student assistance counselors in part to sort of determine and identify what they think would be most valuable to each community.
Any other questions? Mike, just a quick reminder, didn't the nurse at Southern get another award not too long ago on her policy?
Yes, I think that was on the lice policy.
It's still an award, so
Yes,
it's quite a role.
she's racking them up,
Good for her.
deservedly so.
All for the benefit of our kids. Does anybody else have any questions for Dr. LaSousa? No? Seeing none. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind giving us the business administrator's report?
Have nothing to report, no updates. I
Can I-
will report that the construction at the high school on the 2 upper bathrooms was completed, and we had the certificate of occupancy the day before school opened. So the school opened with all functioning restrooms. The contractor is now cleaning up punch list items, and that'll be another completed project.
Excellent. That's fantastic. I had my doubts, seeing it a couple days before that. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Peter? No? All good. We're going to go on to committee reports. Ms. Clark is not able to join us tonight, so in her absence, Mr. Franz is going to give the personnel committee report.
Sure. We just met, and part of that meeting, we discussed demographics as far as our teaching staff, our overall staff, just looking at just a different perspective, so to speak, when we're comprised of age, degrees, and the like, not for any particular reason other than to see the data and just perhaps as a point of reference going forward. We also discussed very much in an initial stage, preliminary, but confidential agreements for staff, something that we don't have in place, and something that we're looking to act upon and put something in there in the teacher's handbook that they get every year when they come back to school. And then out on the horizon would be negotiations with the teachers, just discussing that again at a very preliminary stage, but who will be representing from the board and timelines going forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on to curriculum, Ms. Kenny.
Curriculum has not met since the last meeting.
Thank you very much. Finance and Facilities, Mr. Gilfillan is the chair of that meeting, of that committee rather, and that committee will be meeting tomorrow evening around 6:30, I believe. So Mr. Gilfillan will report on that at the October 5th meeting. Policy and Planning?
We haven't met since the last meeting, and the schedule tomorrow has been amended, so
Okay.
it's a TBD. But
That hasn't been scheduled yet, right?
October 5th.
October 5th? So policy will meet October,
Regular meeting.
right before the regular meeting. Moving on to liaison reports, Mr. Connors is not here for the borough. For the Chatham Township, Ms. Clark couldn't make it, but Ms. Kenny is going to step in again.
Yes, we just had an update with the Safe Routes to School grant that was given to the township. It impacts 3 areas, one of which is the Lafayette Avenue Lafayette Avenue. There's still an active conversation in terms of what is going to take place in terms of the sidewalk being built or not built, and no decisions have been made yet in terms of if a second sidewalk will be built there or not. The township engineer gave a comprehensive report last Thursday, and that meeting will be posted online in the next week. And any questions or concerns should be directed to the township committee, the mayor, or the engineer directly.
Okay, very good. Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Kenny? Sounds good, very good. Moving on to Music and Theater Boosters report, I will give that. The high school marching band had a very successful band camp during the last week of August. They had terrific weather, and it's always a very spirited group. This year's story tells a dramatic story about a ship captain and his crew setting sail in search of a new land. The show will also be enhanced by a 24-foot ship and a 30-foot painted ocean on a tarp on the fields. The Marching Cougars began its series of performances last Friday, and they'll perform at all of the high school football games, and they have 4 competitions in their future. And the first one is this coming Saturday, the 19th, at Roxbury High School. The calendar for the marching band is on the Performing Arts District website. Traditionally, the marching band performs a parent show on the final week of their band camp away, and they've done that for decades probably. This year there was a senior, Brianna Peterson. She organized a barbecue with the band, and that was a fundraising event in conjunction with St. Patrick's Church, and that was to benefit the Johnson family. Brian Johnson worked in the district. Brian Johnson's wife, Kristen, is fighting lung cancer, and these efforts brought out the community, and it raised over $12,000 the afternoon of August 29th, and everybody was incredibly proud of this student. She pulled this all together, and it was really a terrific event for a very good cause. Moving on, the high school fall play, it's cast and it's currently in rehearsal. This year's show is Look Homeward, Angel, and it's based on the 1929 Thomas Wolfe novel. It's a classic coming-of-age story written by Thomas Wolfe, one of the foremost Southern writers. It's set in rural North Carolina, and the high school production the play will be November 20th and 21st, and of course the traditional senior citizen matinee and dinner will be on November 19th. And finally, the Chatham Music Theater Boosters held its first meeting of the year on September 9th, and that group meets the first Wednesday of the month at 7 p.m. in the Lafayette Teachers Lounge. If anybody would like to join, all are welcome. Sorry for the lengthy report, but we're just getting the year going. Moving on to, does anybody have any questions about the Theater Boosters? Chatham Education Foundation, Ms. Kenny.
There's nothing to report.
Recreation, Mr. Nonamaker.
Nothing to report.
Excellent. Thank you. On the PTO District Cabinet meeting, Ms. Cronin went. She'll give us a report on that at the next meeting. She was also unable to attend. I apologize for the light attendance. The Tuesday shift in schedule threw us all off. We're moving on to now the minutes of the previous meeting. I'd like to make a motion to pass the public and private sessions of the August 31st, 2015 meeting.
I'll second the motion.
Mr. DeCrilla?
Ms. Chicarelli?
Yes.
Mr. Ferner?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Nonamaker?
Yes.
Ms. Wright?
Yes.
Passes 5-0.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So this is the part of the program before our regular agenda, before we go through the action items. The first opportunity for public commentary. Mr. Nonamaker is going to help. If there's not a long line, we'll just please use your common sense in how long you talk to allow everybody an opportunity to speak. If we see a long line forming, I apologize, there's only one microphone. So if we see a long line forming, Mr. Nonamaker may, give you a little high sign to say if you could wrap it up and summarize. If you wouldn't mind coming up, when you want to come up, if you could come up to the microphone, and if you could go a couple of deep so we have an idea of how many folks want to speak. Just sign in, introduce yourself, where you live, and let us know what you want to talk about. Please be considerate of each other, board members, administration. Please share your thoughts with us. This is a Board of Education meeting, which I know you're all in the right room. But the purpose of the Board of Education meeting is so that the board, albeit a slight group of us here tonight, we can conduct business. And this is your opportunity to express your concerns, your thoughts, your feelings. This is not really an opportunity for a lengthy dialogue. I mean, sure, if it's a quick, short question, if you have a question for Dr. LaSousa, or something that maybe a committee member will take back, that's the purpose of the public commentary. But it's not meant to be a dialogue or lengthy dialogue. We try not to cut it off. I mean, some boards say, no, you say what you want to say, we're not going to say a word. We try and keep it somewhat open of a dialogue, but not, not a lengthy back and forth. But this is your opportunity to share your thoughts, your concerns, any compliments you want to praise. This would be the opportunity. So again, if you would just line up, sign in, introduce yourselves. And I know sometimes it's uncomfortable, but we're videotaping and audio taping, so if you could stay focused on the mic. And I know sometimes it's hard if you could face the board, because that would be the best projection. If you turn and face the audience, the mic doesn't pick it up. So, Ms. Devlin, you're going to start us off?
Well, just so everybody knows, we're going to try to limit your comments to about 3 minutes. That sound fair? Okay.
Should we sit for 3 minutes and see how long 3 minutes actually is?
You got to wrestle to do that.
That's right.
It's an eternity.
A wrestler knows 3 minutes is an eternity,
It's an eternity.
especially in the third period.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I do not want to regurgitate each sentence from each time I addressed homework at nearly all board meetings last year. Hopefully points were heard. This school year, it would be productive if we could move from dialogue and listening to planning and action. That said, there are 2 points that may serve as a springboard this year and therefore bear repeating from last year. First, 940 Saturdays, which is stated to be the number of Saturdays a child has from birth to age 18. Saturdays or weekends, if you will, traditionally relaxation time, instead are spent on homework and tutorials. Reiterating a second point, there is essentially no correlation between homework as a measure of achievement or improved test scores. Even studies that do show any correlation, it is statistically slight. Now, I know proponents of homework counter a teacher's responsibility, and for that reason, it's necessary or serves a purpose. But there is not a single study that supports that. I question how much more responsible are we expecting our students, our kids, to be anyway. To echo Dr. LaSousa, our students garner assorted accolades on behalf of the district. Chatham's youth, individually and collectively, excel in a myriad of pursuits in and out of the classroom. All kinds of sports, all kinds of performing arts, volunteerism, scouts, internships, EMT, church work, STEM, mentoring, part-time jobs, enrichment, tutoring, and college prep. They are more than engaged or pledged. They already shoulder responsibility and time management challenges. So really, what healthy purpose is homework serving? And I am not referring exclusively to the high school level. If every bit of the youth's time is prescribed and organized, school all day, then homework, even weekends and holidays, plus extracurricular, then how and when does their creative side flourish? When do they follow their curiosity so they can make novel connections between their surroundings, the world, and their interests? When are they able to just be? When can they stop, have free time or downtime, rest and get enough sleep, which is 9 to 11 hours for ages 6 through 13 and 8 to 10 hours for ages 14 through 17. I was at once disappointed and frustrated that the school district permitted homework on the Labor Day holiday and yesterday's Jewish holiday of Rosh Hashanah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Devlin.
Good evening. Thank you very much for all the work you do for us.
Hello, Nabil.
Nabil Moulin, 131 Southern Boulevard, Chatham, New Jersey. I have 2 praises, one for the board and for Mrs. Weber in particular. I was away during the summer and I had the pleasure to watch on YouTube the recording, and I see how much time you have given to all the people who have any questions and any dialogue. I want to share with the public that this is not an obligation, that in many Board of Education elsewhere, the board will just listen and not answer and will give you just 3 minutes and cut you off. And I've been to those meetings. But here, I think it's very civil and it's very productive. So thank you very much for taking the time and allowing for that to happen. Second one for the administration for, allowing our kids to get back to school and come back home healthy and well and all the classes running. It's a lot of work, I know, for a lot of people over the summer, while some of us were vacationing or busy with something else. But it's, a number of professionals have been, I'm sure, very busy over the summer to allow our kids to start school. For your last comment, I'm very pleased to see that we're working with other school districts to find areas of synergy. I hope that's going to expand into other fields, maybe curriculum in the future. I'm involved with STEM activities in the community, and it's one of those areas where often we will not find enough kids to fill in a classroom for a number of those programs. So if there are anything that can go in that direction to allow more offering, maybe across schools or high schools, that would be wonderful. And within my 3 minutes, my last question is, we used to have in the the meeting agenda, the goals of the superintendent that were put for when they were voted on. I know there is a note here to say they are available on file at the central office. Will you be able to share some of that with us before the vote passes, or can we have some?
Yeah, no, you know what, that was at the recommendation of the Department of Education. So they are available, and if you look at the board goals, they're very similar. You know, they almost mirror the superintendent's goals, except for obviously from a board perspective. But they are available, you know.
Okay, so we ask the administration.
Yeah, you just, you know, ask
Okay,
Peter or Dr. LaSousa or Mr. Tequila.
Okay.
But sure thing.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk with you about that, Nabil. There's a new executive county superintendent, and I guess throughout the state, they've been looking to establish more consistency in in the forms that the goals are submitted on, and in some other language and other processes. So we're kind of following suit, adopting the board goals, which I think were available online, or they're here someplace, to mirror what the superintendent's goals are, and I can talk with you, and as well as about the other comment about working with the other school districts.
Thank you.
Hi, Mark Visco from Duchamp Place in Chatham Borough, and I think I'm going to speak on for what most of the people are here for, and that's the decision that the board is making to move the vote for the budget to November, which by Christie's law allows you to do that, and then for the next 4 years will not put the vote up to borough and township residents to vote on as long as it stays within the 2% cap. And I'm asking that you not do that and keep it in April, because I like my right to vote. And I have voted on the school budgets in the past, whether it be a yes or a no, I have voted. And if it's to push it to take away from the people that may vote no, because someone who had spoken 2 weeks ago, I watched the tail end on TV, indicated that, you know, you're losing the trust. And in my opinion, and this is my only opinion, I feel that you're taking away the right to vote for the people that might want to vote no. There are a lot of people who vote yes and like the fact that they have that ability to vote. And by moving it, you're taking away that vote, that right to vote. The other thing the individual had indicated was there are a lot of people here now. The last meeting there weren't. Obviously, word has gotten out, and we have the room somewhat filled. But if you take a look at the results from the last vote for the referendum, there was a very strong opinion from the residents. And if this comes out and you move it, and more people are aware of it even more, because I don't think this was as well communicated as it should have been, there's going to be a lot of angry people, and you really will have dropped even that much lower in the perception of trust with the residents of both the borough and the township. And I really would hope that you would take this into consideration, the fact that people did come out this evening to not move this from April to November and allow the residents their right to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Visco.
Carol Del Sandro, 15 Ellers Drive, Chatham. Unlike Mr. Visco, am not here to support the no moving the vote. I am supporting moving the vote. I think it should become a non-vote for a number of reasons. You can't boo people.
Yeah, come on, please be
Not the way it
respectful of
works.
each other. We're neighbors. Don't do that. If you have something to say,
First
get in
of
line.
all, it is a cost savings to the district. Some might call it immaterial. I wouldn't think anything that has to do with educating children is immaterial. The 2% tax levy enables districts to budget efficiently within the confines of the law. The law was, yes, signed by Governor Christie, but it was done with the, it's a bipartisan law. It didn't come about just from him. And it's also important to note that prior to this law, the school budget was the only governmental budget that was placed on a ballot. There's no other government budgets that are on a ballot. So, and furthermore, the 2% levy, it diminishes the need for public vote because you've now ensured the taxpayers that you're only going to raise it 2%. Yes, are there waivers? Yes, there are waivers, but they're for things that are beyond a district's control: pension costs, healthcare costs, enrollment. That's beyond any district's control, not just ours. So, believe me, if something happens with the pension, which there's nothing out there right now, that was all part of the roadmap that Governor Christie put. As far as I know, there's nothing out there right now. And if that comes about, that's going to be a big problem for this whole state, not just for Chatham. So there's no local district that can fund the pension fund for the teachers. It's just not, it's not going to happen. I've heard a lot of rumblings about the district, the board being not transparent and communicating and accountable. And it doesn't make sense to me because the budget process, it is a transparent process. I've done budgets. You have to submit them to the county superintendent and business administrator. They have to be approved. Anytime you change a line item on a budget by a certain percentage, you owe them an explanation or they won't pass it. The budget requires a public hearing that will not change whether it becomes a non-vote or not. The budget has to be placed on the district's website. You can go on any district in the state, there's almost 600 districts, and by one click, by law, you have to be able to access their budget. So I really am really not clear how the district wouldn't be transparent anymore. Financial reports are done monthly by the business office. They're on pretty much every board meeting.
Sorry.
That's okay, John.
That was
Was that for me?
I'm very sorry.
That's okay, Mr. Nonmaker. There's rules regarding moving money from one account to another. There's transfer laws. And, finally, the district's financial statements are audited every year. The CAFRA can be found on the Department of Education's website. And I have to tell you, I think it's the public's ego getting in the way, and what you're doing, what's happening is you're tying the hands of the administration to get their job done. A 2% cap is not, it's not a problem. And I know everyone says, 500 some odd districts went that way. Why do we have to go that way? I called school boards today, and there's nobody going back right now. I think that's a better indicator. They have heard of no districts changing their minds. I know we're coming up on the 4-year mark because he signed this into law in 2012.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but if you could summarize just so everybody gets
Okay.
an opportunity.
And I just want to tell you that the district I work in, their budget failed in 2010. They had to cut their budget by $384,000, which in the district I'm in on a less than $5 million budget is 8.5%. The budget doesn't go back to you guys if it fails. It goes back to the municipalities, in our case, the borough and the township, and they, with you, sit down like a negotiation process and figure out what's going to be cut. Just so you know, that's what happens if a budget fails. And never say never, because you never know when it might fail.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Again, I'm sorry for that.
That's okay, John.
He's not good with technology.
Want to reset the clock, give her another pen?
I think that was a joke.
Is he serious?
That was a dig at you.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, Steve Georges, Weston Avenue in the borough. Very unhappy with the video that I saw from the last meeting where Stu Carr, a guy I've known for 15 years, watched him help kids in this town go through rec ball, was told that his petition could be false, could be fake, really invalid. And when someone boos in the back, we're all very quick to say, that's not fair. What's the difference between those two? I didn't see anybody on the board stop that. You got to cut that out. It's like you haven't heard a thing since April. It's mind-blowing. I went on the website tonight because I know you're a big fan of saying, go look on the website. And you're absolutely right.
I watched the whole meeting, not the, go to 1 hour and 43.
Hey, I didn't have to watch any more of what I saw. I mean, the guy's veracity was being called on, and ask anybody, the guy's been working for months, and he's not asking you to say no. I mean, he's not asking you to say no, he's asking you to put it on a ballot. And anybody like the young lady that was just standing here can make some flyers, make some phone calls, make some emails. That's the political process that we have. And it seems like you want to take it away because you lost an election. That may not be the case. That's the optics that you're giving us. That's why you got a room full of people here that are just very upset with this. I go on the website and I look at your, what is it, the goals? Boy, it's tough getting old. The guiding principles and a vision statement, okay? I hope, and I assume and hope that those are two important documents that you guys try to live by. And I want to bring it to your attention, and I'm speaking for myself, I'm not speaking for anybody else here. Not one word about the people that pay the bills in either one of those statements. And I'm sorry, I get it. You want to give your kids the best. I understand that. But you've got to face the people that are paying the bills. It's just completely fair to do that. Is there any way you could tell us right now where you guys are headed with this thing?
I mean, not really. I could tell you that, I mean, personally, I'm in favor of it just because, I mean, I've said this 11 times. I know the press only prints that I have no comment, but and we can get into this a lot further when we get to board business, but you're asking a question and I want to be able to answer you, and whether they print it or not. The goal of the board is to protect the district. It's not to protect our kids, and quite frankly, my kids are really out of the district. It won't impact them one way or the other, so it's not a personal thing for me. But the goal is to protect the district and ensure that the administration has the resources that are just required to really keep the lights on. The 2%, if you would let me finish, the 2% just allows us to stay at status quo, and I almost have to disagree with Mrs. D'Alessandro a little bit on her statement that said, if pension comes down the pike, for example, it's a problem that the entire state will have. That's not entirely true, because all of the other districts have moved their vote to November, and the way the legislation is framed right now, it's not even legislation, it's still just a framework that they're working on. But what would happen is the districts that moved it to November would benefit from the proposed offset that the state would fund the municipalities, and the way it's written now, and again, there's nothing solid, the way it's written now, it would be a zero net effect on the residents, only because the school then could apply a waiver. But if we leave it in April and it gets voted down, we literally have to come up with, if it's, let's say it's an 8%, and the range is between 8 and 12%, and this is all just, hypothetical, but this is the catastrophic event, or any imposed state sanction that, as Ms. D'Alessandro said, these are for the things that the board has no control over and can very rarely plan for. And they come down the pike very quickly and they're instantly law, and then you have to react. But in that instance, if we had to, hypothetically, come up with, say, 8% or 10%, just to make numbers easier for me, we'd have to come up with $6 million. The only way to come up with $6 million is to cut about 40 staff members, teachers. So you asked me a question, I want to give you an answer. For me personally, is to ensure that the district has the tools and the resources they need to just maintain. Anything that else has to go, if we want to add security guards like we did, or add a STEM program, even if we want to spend $100,000 on a program, that all has to go back to the voter. That all has to be approved. This is strictly the operating budget that we're talking to, but I go on too long. I should have kept it for board business, but I didn't want you to think that the question wasn't answered, and I answered those questions previously. But, you know, if you only go to the 1 hour and 43 minutes, then you miss the previous.
Okay, I'm not speaking for anybody here, just myself.
And that's fine. I get
Okay?
it. People
And
are
here's
gonna
my answer to that. That's blackmail that I would have hoped board members would be going to the association that you're all members of and saying, you've got to pressure these legislators that they're not going to press this down on us and blackmail us into this other regime. That's insanity. That's why the state's screwed up. That's why our federal budget is screwed up.
Amen.
And so, how about a little pushback against that? When was the last time we told you you couldn't have a budget increase?
I don't recall.
Anybody know when you know what this whole referendum thing? And look, I know you're trying. There's things you want to do. People come in, they ask for things. Yeah, I get that. You know, we said split this thing up because nobody working against this didn't want the fields done. No one didn't want the classrooms built.
And we heard it. We're going to rejigger it.
We love you for that. But it's the same principle. It's the same principle. I go on the website. I can't find anything about this. Somebody said to me, they're redoing the website. So you're redoing it. It's coming. Push back on stuff. We want the voice. This is not that what's that expression?
We could use your help in turning some of the legislation, because the 5 or 9 of us, with the other 550 districts that moved, we could use all of your help. The legislation is what's tying our hands. And again, I'm taking too much of your time.
There's this expression, American exceptionalism, which a lot of people find distasteful, okay? I could go on and all night, pro and con, argue with the counselor. We'd have a lot of fun. Nothing to get done. But I'm not saying that there's Chatham exceptionalism. I'm not saying that. But you got a group of people here that are wide awake, interested in the issues, and I'm not kidding you. I'm in favor of shutting this thing down completely. I want to keep my right to vote. And there's plenty of guys like me that think it's crazy, save the 10 grand, okay? Give us the choice. Don't tell Stu Carr he might have made up names. You know, put it on the ballot.
I don't think anybody said that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Check the video.
Thank you. Sorry I took up some of your time, but it saves me time later.
Hi, Libby Hilton Rath, Chatham Borough. Just a quick comment, Ms. Weber, about you need our help with the legislation. It's not about the legislation at this point. We are here to appeal to you as a Board of Education. You're not compelled to move the vote to November. It's an option that you have. You've had that option since 2011 when the law was enacted. In 2012, you chose not to do that. That's fine. But we're here as citizens and residents urging you to put the question out to the public, not to deal with the legislation. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Surayola. I'm from Chatham Township. I'm here tonight because I felt like my voice needed to be heard, and I was asked by people to come and express my opinion, not to be told which way to vote. I've been in Chatham for 20 years, very successful school district that has helped my kids get to great colleges. But having been here the amount of time that I have, I've worked hard to be a part of this school district and to be an active part of this town because of my desire, but also because of your desire as a group, because the school wanted this community to be together, wanted parents to work with the schools, to work with the town, and I think that is what we have done. And this decision that you're making, I think it takes away that connection to the public that I have been serving for my kids being in this district, and I think it's a real mistake. I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. I mean, working and being up here and I applaud it. I applaud teachers. I always have. But that being said, our children are here. This town school district is where it is because of this community. You guys, the teachers, all working together. You're making a type of decision that isolates your public from you. It sets you apart. You have been telling us in constant, Chatham Education, donate for the fields, help the schools, raise money. We have done so much collectively and together. You are thinking about making a decision that divides. And that's not who we are as a town. That's not who we have been as parental teachers, as teachers, and I really ask you to think about this decision and trust in the fact that this community supports our children, supports you, and applauds our teachers. And I really ask you to rethink this decision and work as a group decision.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Viola.
Hello, Marielle Coker. I would like to I would like to say that Carol Del Sandro made some very good points tonight. I think everyone's actually made some very good points tonight, but I have to say that 2% is keeping the lights on, and everything that we're making decisions about that are of a substantial nature are going to be coming to the vote anyway, because you can't do anything with 2%. You can pay your teachers, you can keep the lights on, you can keep the trucks filled with gasoline, and that's about it. I would like to say also that Education Counts has been working very hard to make sure that the vote passes every year. I am on the board of Education Counts, and we work very, very hard. We have a small group of volunteers that dedicates a tremendous amount of time to making sure that the vote passes, and I would like to ask who can tell us what happens if the vote doesn't pass, because I think we are taking for granted the fact that the vote passes every year, and I don't think we can do that.
And I'm going to punt that to Mr. DeQuilla, so he gives you the official. It goes to the townships and the borough, but
If the budget vote happens to pass, thank you, Mike. If the budget vote happens to fail, our budget is presented to both the township or appointees of the township and appointees of the borough. Both the township and the borough need to agree on a dollar amount to be cut from the budget, anywhere that they see fit. If they say, we want to reduce your budget, that instead of being flat, you should go down 10%, we have to agree, and they will propose areas to be cut, but it is up to district and the board to determine what gets cut to equal the amount they specify. I will say that in other districts I worked in, the township administrator said, because I always said, oh, come on, you don't have to cut the budget, you know we were lean and mean when we failed. And he said, doesn't matter. He said, chances are, if a budget fails, the elected bodies of the township and the borough are compelled to reduce the budget because they have to respond to whatever small minority defeated the budget. It's because they would be in fear of not being reelected themselves. So it is not a pretty process, and as Ms. Del Sandro said, it seems unreasonable that in her district, 8% was cut from a $5 million budget, so you could only imagine what the borough and township may want to do to our district.
And thank you. And 10% is a substantial amount.
10% would be $6 million. Sorry, 10% would be $6 million and about 40 teachers.
That's a tremendous amount of money.
It would be
devastating.
Catastrophic was the word we were.
You know, a lot of people say that they come up here and they compliment the board and they say you always have made good decisions on behalf of our students. I wonder if you realize what would happen to the district should that happen, should that occur. It would be catastrophic. It would be.
Huh? That's a good word.
It would be, and I hope you all realize that, because we do appreciate that the fundamental right to vote is very, very important. And we wouldn't take away, I don't even want to use that word, if there was a reason for it. And we all here work very, very hard. And I know you're all very intelligent people, and I wonder if you realize what would happen if that pension program were to go forward and we were assessed 10%. We would be cutting a tremendous amount of teachers, 40, 50 teachers. You'd have classrooms the size you couldn't even imagine. So when you come up here and you say, thank you for all your hard work, for those of you who do it, it's greatly appreciated. For those of you who come up here and say, we really appreciate that you make great decisions on behalf of the district and our students, be confident that if we do vote to move the vote, there's a good reason for it. And we're not just doing it, we're doing it because of what we foresee could happen in the future. That's the only reason. We're not looking to hurt anybody. We're looking to work very, very hard. So I wonder if you all realize the consequences of what could happen down the line. Like we, the 9 people who sit here, who study this, who read the research, who look at potential future legislation, I wonder if you know what we know. And you have to be confident, whether you like it or you don't like it, no matter what we do here, whether it concerns a baseball field or a vote or whatever, there's going to be a certain percentage of the population that's happy with it. There's going to be a certain percentage of the population that's not happy with it and will throw cabbage at me as I'm walking shopping. And there is a certain percentage of the population that just doesn't care. We care. That's why we sit here. And we don't do things silly-willy. We put a lot of time and effort into this. And we know how you feel about your right to vote. We're looking down the line because, down the road, because should that happen, especially with the retirements and the pensions and health care, if that happens, you know, you're going to be very unhappy when class sizes increase because we can't afford to pay teachers. So think about that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Copeland.
Hi, I'm Mark Bisco. I guess my question is, if you were to present that to us and the voters, what makes you think we would be that unreasonable not to understand the ramifications of those things? You're saying, if we knew what you know, well, tell us. Inform us. Let us know. Because now it just made it sound like there's a lot of stuff that you know that you're not disseminating out to the public. And I don't think that I would be that unreasonable if pensions came up and all the stuff that is out of your control, if that was presented to me and explained to me and to everyone, that we would say, you know what, that's something we have to deal with. We would not want you to turn around and fire teachers. That seems to be the response. We're going to fire all these teachers. We're going to drop this. We're going to do that. It's scare tactics. If you presented it to us...
But there's no other way to come up with that kind of money. But can I ask you a question on your scenario? If you were given this past April a 10% increase that you disagreed with because it's pension and why should I deal with pension and you should have accounted for that, do you, I mean really, in your heart of hearts, do you believe a 10%, it's just hypothetical, do you believe a 10% budget increase would have passed, knowing what you know from the
Wait. Please. No, stop. No, if things are explained to me and I understand what it is and I realize what it is,
I think if I can rephrase my question, not what would you do, what do you think would happen if a 10% came down the pike?
I would think if it was explained to everybody and they understood it, I think reasonable people would vote for it.
Okay. Thank you. I just was polling.
I mean, that would be...
You hesitated, you paused, but I hear you. Thank you.
I mean, I'm not a, you know, I can't tell what a... But if it was presented to me and I understood it, then I would say, you know what, there's things that need to be done, and I would be in favor of it.
And you know the thing that scares me, and I apologize, I'm talking personally again, I wish more people voted, because everybody in this room gets involved. I mean, there's no question. Everybody in this room are the people that get involved. I'm preaching to the choir here. But in the referendum, which was a big deal, huge deal, big, impacted everybody, 15% came out, which means 8% of the voter or 7% of the voters get to decide what happens for the other 93. And you almost want to say, well, they should have exercised their right?
Exactly, you know, and if you don't, that's
just a-
your fault. But the thing
I
is,
know.
though, don't take that away from me
Sure.
if I'm going to vote. And that's,
I
to
hear
the,
you,
to the
but-
woman, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, who was in favor of moving the,
Mrs. Del Sandro?
part of this was to create a question. Well, I'm just being respectful. Part of this was to create a question which would allow people to vote yes or no, and would give you your chance to say, I want to pass it, and for other people to say, no, I want to be able to keep the vote in April. And that's, you know, please don't take that away from me. Just because there are people that don't vote,
It's just a shame.
I do. You know, I
Commentary
mean,
is a shame.
but don't take that away from me because of the other people that don't want to get up there.
I wish there were 13,000 people in this room right now, but, you know, I'm preaching to the choir. These are the people that get involved. I look around the room, these are all the people that get involved on every turn.
Bridget McMenamin, Chatham Borough. You're talking about the danger that we'll vote the budget down and there'll be this cataclysmic event. The reality is that the biggest voting bloc is parents. The same parents who deliver their children to your schools, well-fed, school-ready, and armed with all the requisite supplies. The same parents who volunteer, raise money for the PTO, help the coaches, chaperone, and do everything else it takes to make these schools work. They're the biggest voting bloc. They turn out, they lobby for your budgets. Do you really believe that they're going to vote down the budget? Is that what you're suggesting? I don't understand this.
Anybody else? We do have another opportunity, but this is all good, important dialogue, so there is another opportunity for public commentary, but we seem to be covering a lot of the board business here as well.
Hi, I'm John Kelly, and I live in Chatham Borough, and I'd like to say I'm not one of the people that go to these meetings. In fact, this is my first Board of Ed.
Welcome.
Thank you. And, you know, after commuting from New York and having 3 young children in the school district, I really found out about this vote through a flyer my wife handed to me, which she got at school. So, you know, and I like to think I'm an informed citizen. I've been involved in the town in many different capacities, and you know, I find some of the attitude that I'm seeing on the disdain towards the taxpayers really troubling to me. And I think this turnout is on a Tuesday night. It exemplifies some of the feeling of some of the taxpayers have towards the treatment, and I really think this sends a very poor message to how I think the board should treat and respect the taxpayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you. If there's no additional public commentary of the session, then we'll go on with our action items. There'll be another opportunity. As I said, we've covered a lot of our business, but I certainly want to give every board member an opportunity to speak if they choose. So we're going to move on to personnel. Mr. Franz, I hate to call an audible, but would you mind moving personnel in Ms. Clark's absence?
I will move agenda items A.1 to A.18.
I'll second the motion.
And for those of you that are here just for the first time, we received these packets earlier in the week before the weekend, so we have time to read it over the weekend. So if it, bless you. So if it appears we go through the things quickly, we've actually had these all weekend. They're posted on Friday night for anybody that wants to look at them. So if it appears that we just blow through these pages very quickly, it's because we've already read through each and every item, and we we jot down our questions and we ask of the appropriate administrator when we have them. So I don't mean to backtrack for those that attend to these meetings all the time, but I just wanted to give everybody a general idea of why you might appear that we're blowing, it may appear that we're blowing through these items quickly, because we've already read them and possibly asked the question or waited for our question to ask it here. So I apologize. Does anybody have any questions on personnel for Dr. LaSousa or Ms. Grant? Mr. Nonmaker, you're good?
Yes, I'm good.
Mr. DeQuille, would you mind doing roll, albeit the few of us?
Agenda items A1 through 18. Ms. Chigarelli.
Yes.
Mr. France.
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Nonmaker.
Yes.
And Ms. Weber.
Yes, thank you.
Agenda items passed 5-0.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Mr. Nonmaker, I hate to call an audible, but I'm not on the Finance and Facilities Committee. Would you mind stepping in for Mr. Gilfillan and move B1 through B7 for us?
Absolutely. At this time, I'd like to move action items under finance and facilities, 1 through 7.
And I will second that. I would just like to point out a couple of donations that Mr. Gilfillan usually does this with a lot more flair. The Bank of America giving grant of $500 on behalf of Mr. Franz, who submits his volunteer hours to the Bank of America. He and I both work for the firm, and they give money back to the district. If you volunteer so many hours, they will give money back, and this is where Mr. Franz has opted to put his charitable donation. Oh, this is mine. Wow, I'm giving you all this credit? Oh, let me take that back. This happens to be my donation, but Mr. Franz and I both do it. And we have to log our hours, so when I say we spend hundreds of hours, I literally mean hundreds of hours. I spent 352 hours in the last school year. Mr. Franz also has to log his hours, so it's not a fictitious number. We do have to log those hours. So I counted, it was 21,120 minutes of time spent on board business. The Chatham Music Theater booster donation for $130 to be used for choir robes and replacement of, replace the stoles that go over the shoulder for the music department. There was $300 from the Tri-Can Pioneer Playground to assist with playground equipment. The Connection, $500 to provide extended school year for 2015 for some students. The Gravity Vault donated $389. Oh, those are not donations. Oh, I'm sorry. Those are actions. I apologize. That's why Matt does that so much better.
We're looking for donations.
I know, if anybody would like to donate. So I apologize. I went down too far in the donations.
That's why she's not on the Finance Committee.
That is why I'm not on the Finance Committee. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. LaSousa or Mr. DeCola on the budget or finance? Mr. DeCola, if you don't mind.
Agenda items B1 through B7. Ms. Chigarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Brown. Yes. Ms. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Nonmaker.
Yes.
And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items passed 5-0.
Thank you very much. Ms. Kenny, would you mind moving curriculum?
Yes, I'd like to move items C1 and C2 for vote.
I'll
Second the motion.
No. Oh, yeah.
Is there any discussion on C1 or C2? Peter, who did you give that to? The second.
Oh, Mr. Nonmaker.
Oh, okay.
First.
Not that I'm trying to instigate a
Sound
riot.
travels fast as he's got.
I hear you.
I haven't turned on my mic that time.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Kenny or Dr. LaSousa on these items? No? Mr. DeQuilla?
Agenda items C1 and C2. Ms. Chigarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Franz.
Yes.
Ms. Kennedy.
Yes.
Mr. Nonmaker.
Yes.
And Ms. Weber.
Yes, thank you.
Passed 5-0.
Policy items, Mr. Franz?
Under policy, I move agenda items D1 and D2.
I'll second that.
Any questions on any of those items? No? Thank you. Mr. DeQuilla?
Agenda items D1 and D2. Ms. Chigarelli.
Yes.
Mr. Franz.
Yes.
Ms. Kenny.
Yes.
Mr. Nonmaker.
Yes.
And Ms. Weber.
Yes, thank you.
Passed 5-0.
We have our second opportunity we have our board business, and then following that will be the public commentary. We seem to have jumped into board business a little bit during some of the dialogue, which was good. It was a good dialogue, open dialogue. It was very productive, so I didn't want to cut any of it off, and I didn't want to not answer questions. And certainly if other board members want to speak on this topic, please do. There was, Mr. Kelly had mentioned the flyer that went out. I just wanted to touch on a couple of points where there was some maybe misinformation, and there's so much information it's hard to disseminate, so I'm sure it wasn't intentional. It was just, I just want to clear up a couple of items that may have been misrepresented. Again, not intentionally, just it's the world we live in with social media. One of the flyers said that the board voted on this in 2012, and in fact, they gave results of a 2-6 result. The board has never, ever taken formal action on this. We have talked about it for 3 years. We have talked about it very often for 3 years, but we have never gone to a formal vote. So I'm not sure where the 2-6 came in, but we've never had a vote on this ever. There was also in the flyer, it said that the employees of the district do not contribute to their health care at all. And again, it's almost insulting, but nevertheless, the district, the employees in the district have actually contributed long before it was mandated to contribute, even before Chapter 78, mandated those contributions. And just to give you a rough idea of how much, real dollars and cents, for the 2015-16 school year, the employees will contribute $1.8 million toward their medical expense, $1.8 million. And again, just to take it further, to give you a little bit more information so that we can disseminate it all, and this is all numbers that are in our head, sadly, the district cost for medical and dental is $8.6 million. And some of those costs, are, as we all know, we all have medical insurance put through our jobs. Some of those costs are beyond our control. So these are some of the things that we have to counter in our budget process. Things are beyond our control. So that was another piece of information that may have been miscommunicated. One flyer said that 90% of the tax dollars goes to the schools. And I just want to give you the accurate breakdown. 65% goes to the schools, 20% to the county, and 15% goes to the township and borough. So again, these are just a couple of, there was a few others, but certainly not as glaring, and I know the intentions are all good, and as Mr. Nonamaker said, we fully appreciate, the right to vote, and we're not trying to take away anything, but I just wanted to clear up a few of those items that might have been floating around, just so that everybody's working on the same level playing field. So I had already answered when Mr. Visco got up, I think I've already said my opinion. Mr. Nonamaker, if anybody else on the board, I mean, there's 9 of us up here, not at the moment, but it's a 9-member. I happen to be in the role of facilitator, but it's 9 people, 9 votes. If anybody else would like to share any thoughts, this is the opportunity for board business. If you think everything's been said, I'm okay with that as well. And then we could just go back out to the audience for additional public commentary if they've seen anything or heard anything that they want to chat about more. So it's up to you folks. No, we can go back to the audience because this is, Mr. Franz, did you?
I guess I'd just like to make it clear, speaking on my behalf, perception is what it is, all right? And I can't change that. People have their own opinion. People make their own choices, make their own decisions. At the end of the day, I was elected to serve on the board. The overarching reason we serve as board members is to ensure the district has what they need to continue to run in the most efficient, productive manner. My intent is always pure. I'm not up here with a hidden agenda. I didn't have one when I started, quite honestly. I had no idea what I was getting into.
That's an understatement.
That's the truth. I go back and forth on this. I hear what people are saying out there. There are also people who are not here tonight that also have opinions and have voiced, how they feel about the vote. I hear that people are saying we're taking away your right to vote if the vote was to go to November. You would still have the right to vote for board members. You would still have the right to vote for anything over 2%. You would still have the right to vote for any second question, third question, fourth question, fifth question each and every year. If we don't get it right, say we vote, hypotheticals again, it can be reversed. Granted, it would take 4 years. There are a number of school districts, and again, we're in the minority here, right? that have moved to the November vote. I haven't reached out to those other districts. There's 558 of them. I don't know what they're going to do. I know at the end of the day, we have a vote here we need to take, and a decision we need to make. At the end of the day, you know, my intent is to make what I feel is the best decision in the interest of the school district. I hear what everyone is saying. I hope you can respect my decision when it is given, but this is not something I take lightly. I get it's a big deal based on how many people have shown up. The 3 years I've been here, this is definitely probably, other than the referendum in the auditorium at the high school, this is a record in this room.
And the lights.
And so, in closing, with my comments, I hope people can respect that. I respect, again, that people may or may not like whatever my choice is, 2 weeks, 3 weeks from now. Some people will like it. At the end of the day, again, my intent is to do what's right for the district and nothing more, nothing less.
Thank you, Mr. Franz. If there's no additional comments from the board, we can send it back for us. So we now have our second opportunity for public commentary. I don't know if anybody came in late, but if you wouldn't mind, if you just sign in, speak into the mic, and allow for anybody else that might want to speak behind you. Hello, Nabil.
Hello again. I'm speaking on this topic, and I'm too very concerned about taking away the privilege and the right that the community has into deciding on the school budget. I have often been here advocating for more resources for the school, and I will continue doing that. I have the perception that whenever we look at the room at those people who don't agree with the fact that we're going to take away their right to vote, is that they're all the people who usually vote no for the budget. I don't think it's the case. My privilege comes with the ability for me to have an open dialogue and the obligation from the people who are submitting that vote to submit to my consideration through the different presentations whatever their project is to serve our school and our kids, and for me to weigh in and give my input, knowing that they will not get my support if I don't have satisfaction for the answer. That goes away if people are not allowed to vote on the budget. Yes, there will be presentations, but it's teethless, and that's not how democracy works. So, from the resources perspective, our school district has been indeed very lean and very too lean to my perspective, to my sense. We have one of the lowest median salary average, median salary for the faculty, for the teachers, when we compare with all the other school districts. When you look at Chatham, it's not that we pay less the teachers, but we happen to take younger teachers come in right out of school, and that was the policy of the school district or the administration, or that was just the case. So on the mean salary for our teachers is lower than all the comparable school districts. That's one. And two, our classrooms are some of the most crowded. So I don't know if you have had kids in the schools recently, but if you go to any elementary school, all of them are close to the 25 number or at the 25 number. If you go to all the schools around us, so I go to Milburn, I go to Summit, they are not close to that. So you will see me here come often, advocate for more resources. We need smaller classrooms because they allow for better education. But there are other items that I would not be in favor of. So, and that's my privilege to express that opinion. So my point is, myself and many others in the community want to retain their ability to weigh in, but they're probably going to support the budget if it's reasonable and if it comes to a conclusion. That they understand. So that's my comments on this topic. So please don't take away the privilege, the right the community has to weigh in to say yay or nay for the budget. And it's up to us, those community members, the education council, and the other, to go and explain and educate. And also, it's your job, the board members, to continue doing what you do and increase those forums of dialogue and communication, and go and sell the budget. People will listen. Most people are reasonable. The vast majority of people are reasonable. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill.
Good evening. I'm Lauren Migliozzi from Chatham Borough, and I just am coming to ask you, I strongly ask the board to consider leaving the vote in April, thus allowing Chatham residents to keep their right to vote. I think that one of the things that we saw in April, despite the strong opposition against the $25 million referendum, the budget wasn't even close to being failed. People supported the budget. They went out despite whatever they felt about the referendum. They still supported the budget, and they understood that the budget was something that was important and was needed. And I think that the board needs to trust Chatham and its residents that they will give the schools what they need to operate and to move forward. Additionally, anything above the 2%, if something catastrophic happened, you do have to come out and ask us anyway. And I think that just assuming that we wouldn't want to vote for that 2% and taking away our right to do that is a disservice to Chatham and its residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your son did an excellent job, by the way, at the memorial on Saturday.
Oh, thank you.
Oh. Go ahead. Oh, Ms. Migliozzi? Are there any additional public commentary? Oh, I didn't see you sitting here.
Hello, my name's Wendy Pearson. And,
I'm sorry, Ms. Pearson, would you mind signing in?
Sure.
Sorry about that. Paperwork, bureaucracy. Peter will yell at me later if you don't.
There are so many things to consider in what we're talking about here about the change in this vote. You can't hear me? Okay. There's so much to consider. I hear that in regard to the change in this vote. And I hear what you're saying about perception. Perception is what it is. I think you can change that. My concern is about the relationship between the community and the board. I believe you all do work really hard to do what's in the best interest of the school system. I think you do a great job. I apologize if I'm a little uneducated. I would love to see more information come out in regards to the advantages and disadvantages of making this change. I think the community, there are people in the community who have information to share regarding that, as well as, I mean, it's like this back and forth communication. I guess what ideally I think would be wonderful would be if that information can be shared and questions and concerns discussed, and then a vote put to the public on whether they want to make that change or not. When I hear you talk about some of the catastrophic things that could occur if this doesn't happen, that is really concerning to me. So I appreciate hearing that. I appreciate knowing things that you all know that many of us don't know. So that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson.
Hi, my name is Steve Hauk. I'm at 9 Buttonwood Lane in Chatham. And I'd just like to pick up on a theme that Sue Raiola touched on, which is that education in this town should be a collaborative effort. It should be a non-controversial effort. I think we all have similar goals. And I feel like anything that the board puts out there should have a great deal of community support. You're not going to have 100% support on everything, but things should be passing by 70, 75%, 80% support. People should be on the same page in terms of what our objectives are. And I feel like what happened with the referendum in April just brought it to sharp focus that I think the board was frankly out of touch with what the community wanted. For a vote like that to go down with 2/3 of the people voting against it, I think is a fairly colossal misunderstanding on the part of the board of what the community wanted. And I think we're now at another point where you run the danger of the community feeling alienated. I mean, if you decide to move it to November, they will be disenfranchised. And I just think procedurally that's a mistake. I mean, in April, frankly, I was a no vote, but I was a no vote from a process perspective. I thought that the vote should have been, or the referendum broken down into two components. I frankly might have been a yes vote if that had been done, but having attended some of the meetings and heard the public outcry asking for it to be procedurally broken into two different votes and the board not respecting and being responsive to that, I felt that was a mistake and that I couldn't vote in favor of it. And I feel like there's a danger here again of the board just procedurally getting it wrong. As I understand it, the vote, you can actually put a question on the ballot in November asking the public whether they want to move the vote to April or not. And that will be at no additional cost to the taxpayers to do that. So just query why the board wouldn't do that, why you would take away the vote and in essence the participation of the community. I mean, I hear you lamenting the fact that 85% of people don't participate. You're going to further diminish people's interest or desire to participate in the process if they can't even vote. So I guess I would just urge you to trust in the voters rather than just having 9 people sitting up here making this determination. Why wouldn't we allow the community to weigh in and express its own desire, whether that is to keep it in April or move it to November? There just doesn't seem to be there's no additional cost to it. There doesn't seem to be any downside to doing it. We're letting the voters express their interests. So I'd urge you to consider that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Howe.
Hi, I'm Matt Migliozzi, and I'm a resident of Chatham Borough. And I'm not particularly informed. I'm only a high school student, but I go to Regis High School, and I'm hearing you guys talk. A lot of your main point about this moving the vote to November is to protect the district in the event of how do you speak it, a catastrophic turn of events in which the school board would lose 10% of its budget. But what I want to know is why you see this as a catastrophic turn of events if you lose 10%. And here's why. Because I've lived in Chatham my whole life, and I see this town and the residents as being focused wholeheartedly on the education of the children in this town. And I think even if there was that 10% drop, that you have to trust that the wholehearted focus is going to get these residents to rally, all right, and surpass, anything that you deem catastrophic. Because you know, it's the adversity here. And I know it might sound like, you know, you guys understand what I'm saying?
Sure, I do. Although, and Matt, thank you. Well done, Matt. If you wouldn't mind signing in, I appreciate that. Is there a pen there, or did somebody swipe it?
Well, what if I don't?
Nothing really. You're the boss. He's still going to write your name down because we have to keep minutes.
And you're still on video.
And you're still on video. But hey, your choice.
Yeah, I don't
What if
think
you
I
do,
will.
though?
Yeah, that's my question. What happens with this sheet?
It goes to Peter. That's what I like, man.
Catastrophic consequences.
Oh yeah, catastrophic. Oh, they'll escort me out? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. And again, great job on Saturday at the memorial. You spoke eloquently. It was fantastic. Thank you.
I figure this is good timing. We've just had a little levity. So a few laughs always helps. All right. I'm Mary Ann Houck, Chatham Township. I'm the other half of the Houck household. I want to reflect on some of the things that were said tonight because we talked a lot about this today actually with our daughter who's going to be a sophomore in college now, who's still home, who hasn't left yet, and we were talking a lot with her about this at lunch today, you know, from a 19-year-old's point of view who went through the entire Chatham school process here and I think did very, very, very well. To that point was what Sue Raiola said and kind of what my husband said. I think, and what the young man just said who goes to Regis, obviously, when we're all together and supporting each other and on board, we could do so much more. I mean, in 20 years that I've been here, I've never seen sort of the word combative has kind of come up in things that have been discussed with other people I know who live in town. And I just feel like we're using so much energy and resources sort of kind of not moving in the same direction. I don't know. And I'm standing here saying this right now, and I just kind of can't believe it. I've never seen that really in this town. I guess there's nothing that's been compelling enough to me, and obviously I'm sure I don't know as much as Mr. Nonemacher knows, and you all know, because we don't study. We're trying, those of us who are here have tried to educate ourselves and inform ourselves as best as we can, and we do appreciate and try to acknowledge all the time that our board and our teachers and our administration put into our schools, and again, I think that's why Chatham, everybody in the state knows that Chatham's a special place. Our schools are a special place. And I think that is because we have all, pooled our resources and our energy and worked together. When we're talking about $60 million, we're talking about a budget of $60 million. I guess one of my questions is, so much of the comments and the focus has been about that 2%. But I guess what I want to understand, if you can help me understand, were it to move to November and we don't have that, that option in April. When you're talking about $60 million, which will surely go up, it's also then the allocation of that $60 million. I think you talked about $8.6 million for health insurance and benefits, $1.8 million that's actually contributed by the teachers and the staff. But things like that are different line items in the budget that can be moved around or, pay, still from Peter to pay Paul or however we want to put it. Those are going to be things that can happen in the budget too, right? So you're still talking about spending $60 million.
Yep. So
sure.
You can drop world languages and bring in holographs.
Right. So that's that kind of thing. Then we have no. If it's not just that we what if we're supportive of supporting the budget 10%? That's not the issue. What if it's the way the budget's constructed or the way the budget's allocated? What if that's what we're not in support of, and now we don't have a way to voice, our thoughts? All right, I'll stop. I won't go on. But that was one of my main questions. Was just mostly about the allocation, and the one point that was made about that there's no other government vote that like the school board vote. I think, in fairness, you have to remember: is it 90% of our taxes goes to our schools? So if there's a separate vote,
65.
Okay, 65%. Still a very large percentage. So it's, in fairness, to say that you have a separate vote, because if you think 65% of your, and I have a whole other thing that I will work on, and I want to talk to you about, Jill, but I think, you know, we have so much money in this town, and we do dedicate so much money to our schools, and we've done a good job. I think it's time, yes, to push back to the legislation in the state. Yes, I go to Bloomfield, I go to Asbury Park, I go to these school districts where I see they spend $25,000 per pupil. They've done it for decades. These wealthy districts, I'm so tired of these quote-unquote wealthy districts where we've spent our state dollars and so many of our dollars going to these schools where they're not turning out the same kind of students, they're not accomplishing the same kind of things that we're accomplishing, and we've been that wealthy school district that's given our money to all these other districts around the state where they have 4 gyms, and I'll go on and on. I think it is time to push back at the state. You know, our schools need some things. We are bursting. We're a public school system. We can't turn away kids. We got to take those kids. So we got to tell the state and Chris Christie, and you know, we got to get more parents to understand that too. That you know, maybe it's time to say, give Chatham some money. Let Chatham get a few cuts so that we can, like, you know, build a few more classrooms and hire a few more teachers, because we've got these, you know, people moving to our town and there's nothing we can do about that. So that's my last rant. But
Thank you,
if
Mrs.
anybody
Howe.
has any ideas about what I can do in Trenton to address that, that's something I would work on, because I don't want us fighting amongst ourselves here with the resources that we have, because we all want to do the best we can with that. I don't want us using our energy fighting against each other.
Thank you, Mrs. Howe.
I would like to clarify that whether or not there is an April election on the budget or the budget moved to November, the district process remains relatively the same. And this has been stated almost every meeting since it was brought up by the public in April. The district, whether or not there is a vote in April, Dr. D'Souza and I will continue to make presentations to each of the PTOs, which we have done for all the years, you know, in the past. There would continue to be there would continue to be open finance meetings to discuss the budget. There will continue to be a budget public hearing. The board still gets to vote to approve the budget, and the public gets to comment on it before that vote. Our budget still needs executive county superintendent and executive county business official approval before it can be accepted, whether or not there is a vote. So there is still transparency in our process, and people have commented that, oh, we won't get to comment on it, we don't get to say what happens. None of what we've done over the past years that I've been here, which is now going into year 5, would change. The only issue is there is no vote, or there could be no vote. So the people that have questioned the process, you need to know that information about how the budget would still be prepared.
It's like you completely forgot what happened in April.
We can't hear you back there.
Yeah, you got to.
Oh, okay.
Well,
Ms. Pearson?
Hi. Something I forgot to say.
Oh, welcome back.
Thank you. Piggybacking on some of what other people have said, there are a lot of people who are very involved, and I like to think, maybe I'm overly optimistic, I don't know, but I would...
This is the A team right here.
Yeah, I know. I know some of them. That some of this A team and maybe even others would actually be willing to help with that legislative fight. I like to think that. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Pearson.
I'll just say one of the best ways to be involved on that front is to become an active participant in the Garden State Coalition of Schools. They're an organization that represents the suburban school district of New Jersey. We're one of the charter districts. I meet with other folks from that organization, parents, board members, and superintendents about once a month, but the Garden State Coalition of Schools is probably the main lobbying group for suburban districts that feel they're underfunded.
Libby Hills and Rath, Chatham Borough. I'd just like to, on Mr. Tequila's comments just now about that the process would remain the same, I'm going to read from January 2012, Dr. D'Souza, pluses and minuses when this came up back then. One of the pluses, or upside, to the board says, quote, changes the nature, so for moving from April to November is a plus because it changes the nature of, quote, selling the budget to one of informing citizens of the budget. This would likely save time from the perspective of advisory committees, presentations, publications, et cetera. That was from January of 2012. Mr. Tequila or Mr. L'Souza, do you have any comments about that?
Sure. That was in literally maybe the month or two, whenever that was, after the governor signed the legislation.
Right.
There were a lot of open questions about the law and how it would work and the impact. And I prepared a summary, that I thought was the most accurate, that I could get for the board members who were asking questions and holding a forum about whether or not it made sense to move the vote. I mean, that's pretty much what, it's similar to what Nabil just said in terms of right now the process is to sell the budget. Maybe that's not the best language. Maybe better language is to persuade the voters or get input. I fully acknowledge I may not have used the best language there. But that this legislation really paints the Board of Education more of the brush of a municipal body, whereas in the municipal bodies, they have the public hearing, let's say, but it's not one as much of selling the budget or persuading the voters and so forth. It's more of informing the citizens.
Right, but I think that what that said to me was that therefore there would be less time taken, there would be less communication with the public, right? That's kind of what I got from that.
Sure, but that was also 3 years ago without the benefit of knowing which other districts had moved, how they had operated.
When the law was first enacted, nearly all the districts moved. It was near 400.
Not at that time, though. That happened in the weeks and the months after we had our hearing at Chatham High School.
I had some questions for Mr. Gilfillan and Ms. Clark, who aren't here, so I'll just ask Ms. Ciccarelli. At the June 15th meeting, you stated you would support putting a question to the public asking whether we want the vote to move. Then at the August 31st meeting, which was the last one, when we came out and said we'd like to have this vote, and we had a petition of 300 people, you didn't restate your support, and I was wondering what's changed between June and August and today.
I'm fairly certain that when I stated in June was that I would be open if the board had decided to put a question on the November ballot. I said I would be open to that. We did not make a vote about that.
No, there was no vote. This was just during board business. Ms. Weber asked comments from each member. Yeah, and you said you would welcome and support input from the public as a public
we
vote.
Are welcoming and supporting.
No, a vote on it.
Listen, I'm one board member that's not going to make a decision about putting a question on the November ballot. At the time, we were making a discussion about whether or not anybody would support. I don't believe there was no vote given. No. Am I correct?
That's correct.
It was no formal business. Would you support putting a question on the November ballot? Yes, at that time, yes, I did believe so.
Right.
And I think as I have been more educated about the ramifications of an operating budget failing, I think my position has changed slightly. I think, I've heard a lot of commentary where people are comparing the referendum to the operating budget. They're two completely different animals. We are talking about what our teachers and our district needs, not what they want, what they need to operate functionally for our children and for this district. The referendum is a whole different ballgame. Generally, a referendum comes out with a, if you will, wish list. We obviously can operate without the referendum having passed. We're doing so. We could not operate the way we are operating right now if our budget had failed. So I think what we need to think about is, these 9 people up here, as Mr. Nonamaker has said and as Mr. Franz said as well, we are all out here for the benefit of our children and for the benefit of our children's education. We're not looking to pull the wool over anyone's eyes and spend all this money on things that are our wish list, things that teachers want or that we want or that kids even want. We are simply trying to run the school district the way it needs to be run. And the operating budget, as it is stated, is what we need to run the school district. If it fails, there are going to be way more unhappy parents here. I guarantee you, if the budget were to fail, this meeting will be piped out into the parking lot because people are going to flip.
Okay, I understand referendum is different. It's a capital expenditure versus an operating budget. But what I was asking is, do you support putting the question to the public as to whether they want the vote moved from April to November? You did in June.
At this time, no, I do not.
Okay. Unfortunately, Mr. Gilfillan and Ms. Clark aren't here to ask them the same question. So I'm going to basically ask now.
If I may, you have,
Yeah.
you're
Sure.
past, I have not been strict. If you could just please wrap.
I
up.
certainly am.
I'm not interrupting you, I apologize.
No problem.
I don't want this to go off again.
I'd like to ask if, based on everyone that's here and the 300 signatures we got and the emails that I'm sure you received and the 100+ views, are you going to still vote on October 5th to pass the resolution, or will you put it out to a vote to the public?
The plan right now is to vote on October 5th.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Is there any additional commentary? If not, we can close the meeting. Ms. Hauk?
I'm sorry.
Typically, we do a one and done, but because this is, no,
This is really short.
But this is all good dialogue, and as I said,
just-
this is the A-team here,
I'm
so.
going to come clean. I want
this
you
is
to
what
know
we wanna hear.
with my comments, and that in the last vote, we were a split household, actually. Of course, I voted to pass the budget, and I did vote for the referendum. And I had very mixed feelings about it. My husband talked very heatedly about it, and he was not happy with the process. It wasn't everything in the vote, and I did vote for it. So I'm coming clean on that. That I clearly am very, very supportive of doing everything that we can that our schools need. I do think that yes, this respectful communication is very, very important, and I think some people were upset because there have been some things that were on video that we watched in the last month where the communication really did not seem very respectful. So, you deserve respect, we deserve respect, and you'll always have my support.
Thank you, Ms. Hauk. Good deal, you're going for a third bite at the apple?
No.
You gotta wrap, oh, sorry, Ms. Capucci.
Hi, Barb Capucci, Chatham Borough, Washington Avenue. First of all, I support what Mary Ann Hauk just said in reference to the respectful commentary. I agree with that. I just want to back her up on that. And I also want to say, in reference to, I just walked in, so I have no idea what everybody has been commenting on this evening.
Fresh ears.
I'm sorry?
You're a set of fresh ears then.
I'm a set of fresh ears. Let me find this. So what I wanted to say in reference to all of this was in regards to the vote, moving it from April to November. I know that there's been a lot of commentary about I don't want to lose my right to vote, et cetera, things like that. There are much bigger issues. Ms. Ciccarelli brought out a great point in reference to the operating budget. This is strictly in reference to what does that pension reform have to do in reference to this operating budget? How is it going to decimate our school districts, not only here in Chatham, but across the entire state of New Jersey? And that's something that we really need to be educated upon. And perhaps something that the voters here in Chatham have not been educated upon. Maybe they're not reading the newspapers, they're not getting the Star Ledger, they're not reading it online, they're not really understanding what those ramifications are really going to mean to us. Maybe they need to go through an April vote with a second question, with an 8% tax increase in order to really learn a hard lesson. I don't know. I know you're cringing on that, Bill. I know you're cringing on that. But what I'm saying is that maybe the board needs to just maybe they just need to reconsider and just perhaps think about not moving the vote this year and then perhaps rethinking this vote again at another time when the voters are more educated about the pension reform. So that's all I really have to say in reference to this. It's not one or the other. I think that all of you are working incredibly hard in reference to this. I want to give you a lot of credence. I know how much volunteer work there is in reference to this. And I thank all of you for what you do for our students in the school district.
So, but that's just one thing that I do want to say.
Thank you, Mrs. Capucci. Is there any, sorry, Nabil, hang on one second. Is there anybody that hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet? And Nabil, you're a tremendous supporter, third bite of the apple. We're going to ask you to be very brief. I just want to make sure that there's somebody out there that hasn't had an opportunity. That's fair, correct? That hasn't had an opportunity that would like to speak? Now, Nabil's a regular here. He comes to every meeting, just about for them, 99% of them. No, everybody's good? Not that if he says something that spurs you on, then so be it. But if you wouldn't mind being brief, we would appreciate it. Thank you,
I will
Bill.
be. So it's not on the topic, it's more on the process. I would like to, all of us as a community, you that work for, making sure our school system is working, to just look at what we've been through here. It took filling a room with people who probably have other things to do.
We do too.
Right. But you're there, you're elected.
I just don't want you to lead with how busy you guys are.
No, that's not. I don't think that's the point. I'm confident that you want the input of the public. I think there are other ways to have that. There are other means to have the dialogue going without all of us emailing our friends. Well, you have to come that specific day because we need to fill in the room. Because if we don't fill in the room, they're not listening and all that stuff. That's medieval politics for me. I think we are more civilized than that. We ought to think of other ways to collect the input of the community and in a reasoned way, in a more civilized way, I would argue, talk about those things. Some communities call that a strategic process. Strategic planning. In New Providence, they had a series of dialogues about these issues and other issues. In Madison, they did the same thing. Relaxed, constructively. It does not take away the decision from the people we elect. It does not take the decision away from the administration. But it makes the contribution and dialogue more of a cooperative construction of whatever comes through. Not come and you have 3 minutes and you've been very generous and liberal in letting us, speak our mind and all that stuff. But I don't think this is a very productive way to engage in the community. I think there are other ways, and I don't know what's the answer for Chatham, but it's certainly not this circus going on here, or making sure that we show up at 7:30 and go find the babysitter and all that stuff. So I don't think that's very healthy. So I know you're very smart people around here, and all of us, we can contribute in thinking about that, but please make it more of a, let's find a way to make it more of a collaborative process, more of a constructive way to get the community input and decide whatever you need to decide. Thank you.
Thank you, Nabil. I still can't get used to you without your mustache. I'm still having trouble getting used to you without your mustache.
I'll bring it back if that's what it takes.
Maybe I'm getting used to it then. No. Well, thank you everybody for coming out. This was great dialogue. I'd like to make a motion to. I'm sorry, I apologize. Unless some other board members have. I'd like to make a motion then to close the public session. We do not have an executive session, correct? We do not. So I make a motion to close the public session.
Second the motion.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstaining? Thank you all very much. Please drive safely. Tom, thank you so much for your help in recording. Thank you.
Miss Crowley,